Imagine an FPS game where no match ever plays out the same way. You might take it for granted now. The finals doesn't seem that different from other FPS fare on the surface, but it has a narrative that goes way back into the roots of FPS design history. This game isn't just evolution, it's a revolution, years in the making. To understand why we got here, let's go on a trip. A trip through the years of FPS game development. We'll start with 1993. Doom popularizes the FPS genre and pioneers immersive 3D graphics, as well as networked multiplayer gaming. In 1997, GoldenEye brings FPS games to the console world. We see split-screen multiplayer. Half-Life in 1998 introduces a story-based approach to FPS games, further popularizing the genre. And then a mod of Half-Life releases 2 years later, with an emphasis on accuracy and a high penalty for mistakes, creating a strategic and team-oriented multiplayer game. 7 years later, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare releases with huge emphasis on cinematic presentation, fast-paced gameplay, and a deep and rich multiplayer environment. But how much could we push the boundaries of what this multiplayer environment was capable of? Out of all those games, there's one that I didn't mention, called Battlefield Bad Company 2. You might just take one look at this and go, what the heck does this have to do with a virtual game show FPS? This guy's in an Elvis suit, for crying out loud. Oh, thank you very much. It's true, Bad Company 2 predated the microtransaction era. And while the BDUs are gone, the engineering is still there. In Bad Company 2, you could bring a building down to the ground. In 2010, this was a big deal for a mainstream game. But it wasn't really like that. It had the effect of that, but what you were doing in practice was doing an amount of damage that triggered a preset animation. But that's the magic of game development, right? If you show the illusion, it's not fun anymore. Bad Company 2 was what got a lot of people into the series, at least on consoles many years ago. It was massive. In March 2010, it had sold over 2.3 million copies, and it was the best-selling March release on record in North America and Europe at the time.
That is the greatest thing I have ever seen in my entire life.
Sure, you could shoot through weak cover in Call of Duty, that was cool. But the Battlefield games were unique in giving you the ability to blow apart cover, interaction with the environment. Usually an FPS game kind of had to make that their whole gimmick. Sometimes that gimmick worked, and sometimes it didn't. But if you're talking multiplayer, at the time, nobody did destruction like Battlefield. But I am talking about a 14-year-old game, and a big wall in the way at the time was hardware. Consoles and gaming PCs had less processing power and memory, and could only render so much. Physics engines at the time were less advanced. You could destroy a building, but as I showed you, it did so in a predetermined way. It was preset animation that would activate under certain conditions, and wasn't totally unpredictable. Something else that gets more or less ignored is the network capabilities of 2010 as well. You had less capabilities for synchronizing destruction events across multiple computers or consoles. So the technology at the time was certainly powerful, but you could only go so far with it. And I'm willing to bet some devs of Battlefield felt the same way. So who are the devs of the finals? Embark Studios was founded by former Battlefield devs, principally some of the people that were at the height of DICE's popularity with the series. We're talking former CEO of DICE, now CEO of Embark Studios, Patrick Soderlund. The last time I read the name Patrick Soderlund was off of the back end of controversy surrounding Battlefield 5 in 2018. The game delved into some identity politics at a time that was very emotionally charged. This video is not an op-ed on that topic, so I won't dwell on that. While I do think that Battlefield 5's reception had a lot to do with him leaving, I think it was more of a convenient reason for him to get to work on a bigger project. The game takes place in a virtual game show, and as such gets to have a wide and varied pool when it comes to its cosmetic and artistic environment. A blank canvas, if you will. It features Las Vegas as a map. It features Monaco as a map, to name a few. You can be a raven-winged, death-dealing dancer, a savvy punk in a kitsune mask, a rough-and-tumble soldier, or an urban ninja. You can be anything you want and fight in exotic, lavish locations for an audience. Who cares? The devs care.
The places that we picked, it could be maybe a place that you've seen, maybe it's a place that you heard of, maybe it's a place that you really want to go to, maybe it's a place that you want to visit, and by either even like playing our games, it could be like you get super excited, like, oh, I've heard about this place, I've seen this place, I've always wanted to go to this place. You know, also what Timida say, also being able to tell a story about this place.
This is the visual, and what you look at doesn't seem that crazy. But just look under the hood. The game runs server side, not client side.
We said, what if we just put all of the destruction on the server? We don't let the clients mispredict anything. We don't run physics on the clients at all. So we push all of the, the dynamism bits over to the server, and we just send out the network data so that the clients get the correct transforms for the moving platforms, the debris piles, etc.
By calculating data on the game server rather than your computer, it ensures everyone is running on the same game state. What you see is what your opponent sees.
We try and minimize the amount of prediction that we have as much as possible so that we can stay true to, what the server is saying, because the server down the line is the truth of what's happening in the game.
It makes it more difficult for players to manipulate game data and cheat as well. And perhaps the underbelly that connects all of this together is reducing computational load, which, when we circle back to the game's complex systems, like destruction, we get a very, very ambitious project.
The proposal of running movement on the server is scary to a game dev. And I guess that's why we work here. We do scary stuff, and we try to just make the scary stuff not scary anymore, I guess. But it's been a journey.
The Finals uses Unreal Engine 5, and with it, a very, very powerful tool called nanite. Nanite is geometry tech that allows developers to create incredibly detailed objects and environments without a ton of performance load. The technology works like this. It can scale destruction anywhere between big chunks or small, fine, dusted particles, finer than a pixel. It's called micro-polygon geometry.
There are over 1 billion triangles of source geometry in each frame that nanite crunches down losslessly to around 20 million drawn triangles. This isn't noise. These are the triangles, each a different color. Most are so small that they look like noise. Nanite achieves detail down to the pixel, which means triangles are often the size of pixels.
It results in realistic debris, finer fragmentation, and more intricate, detailed damage models. Because this is streamed and scaled based on the camera, artists don't need to make multiple level of detail copies of the same thing. Nanite has the ability to import high-quality assets without downscaling as well, making the workflow for the devs considerably more efficient.
It means freedom of choice in terms of the assets that you can use. Now you don't have to worry about generating normal maps or low-resolution proxies. You can load in full movie-quality assets straight into the engine and be able to use them in your game.
This technological leap propels the Finals into a competitive edge, distinguishing it in a crowded FPS marketplace, and showing what's possible with the tech. It's hard to say what the original Bad Company 2 team would have done with this kind of technology, but the possibilities therein probably weren't even considered. Although, the principles remain the same: blow up cover and create new paths. Now the execution has evolved. Finer detail in the destruction, combined with the advancement of processing power and real-time calculations, together with advanced movement systems the finals offers a breadth of variation and unique skill expression. The impact of the finals isn't just in the spectacle of its destruction or the depth of its gameplay. It's about setting a standard for what's possible in interactive environments. This isn't just evolution, it's transformation, where each match writes its own narrative and each player is a sculptor of a virtual world. Oh.
What are those 1 HP? There's 2 teams, quick res.
Combat in the finals is frantic and fast-paced. Ooh, I'm lit. Dead.
Nice. For the goats.
But thankfully, there's a lot of options for you.
Arming a mine!
I love this part of our show. Who will get to the new vault first?
Hey, why not take a shortcut over a bridge?
Jump pad deployed!
Does this look familiar? It does what you'd expect.
Oh, our cover's blown.
I really want to see that from his perspective.
So low. I wiped them.
Explosive mine placed!
Oh, my crane.
I killed them.
Yeah, take them off. Oh, yeah, look at him. He's right there. Take them off down. I want you to shoot right on that.
The format of the game is unique in and of itself. Instead of typical capture the flag, domination, or elimination style objectives we're used to seeing, the game encourages aggressive risk-taking and wants you to move around as much as possible. For the purpose of this video, I'll be talking about the tournament mode cash out. There's crates with cash all over the map. Your job is to get the money and put it in the box. Protect the box while it cashes out, and make sure the opponent doesn't steal it.
Nice.
Tournament mode works off of a bracketing system, wherein you'll play as one of 4 3-player teams, all competing against one another. Score enough points, and you work your way up the ladder until you reach the finals, where it's a simpler 3v3. There are 3 classes, designated by their movement and hit points: light, medium, and heavy. The light has a grappling hook and a cloaking ability. The medium is a powerful support class, and the heavy can use a big old machine gun and an RPG. Nading it?
Is he dead?
You don't need cracked out movement. Here, I use C4 to help my teammate get a better shot.
He's one shot, 3rd floor. Going to the attic.
Damn.
So the game offers something for everybody in a way I haven't seen a lot of FPS games accomplish. The world is your FPS oyster in the finals. That's the whole point.
He's one. He's one.
Get him. Nice. The game uses AI voice acting. There's been backlash.
And the reason that we go this route is that AI text-to-speech is finally extremely powerful. It gets us far enough in terms of quality and allows us to be extremely reactive to new ideas. For instance, if a game designer comes up with a new idea for a game mode, we can have voiceover representing that in just a matter of hours instead of months. We don't have to do temp recordings that needs replacing. We're really coming into like a new dawn when it comes to video game voices. And if it sounds a bit off, it still blends kind of well with the fantasy of the virtual game show aesthetically.
This is a fast-paced, free-to-play, multiplayer shooter. Most people won't notice or won't care about the AI. But Embark is definitely making a stance here. Games are more expensive just to make than they were back then. Higher quality graphics, more detailed environments, and more complex mechanics all require more resources to develop. Things cost money. Embark Studios insists the process was necessary to get the project done, with what they called a modest studio in numbers. You probably need to be a tech nerd or obsessed to truly get a proper picture in your head of how much Embark's budget was taken up working on the technology of the finals. What we see is a product that's taken a decent amount of time to make from start to finish. Development footage goes as far back as 2020. Nobody's a mind reader. Nobody can sneak into Embark's office, look at the balance sheet, and really see, as a matter of fact, oh yeah, they used the rest of their budget on AI voice acting. They couldn't have done the project without it. All people can do is take them at their word. But if you wanted to lie, you could definitely do it here. If the game does well, other studios aren't just gonna look at the mechanical design and see what they've done. They'll also take note of how they consolidated their workflow. Is it worth it? Well, like I said, this video is not an op-ed. But if a business person tells you they're trying to save time, remember that old saying, time is money. The Finals is a game that's made some compromises for the scope of its technologically ambitious goals. It seeks to iterate on development concepts that go back well over a decade and repackage those concepts into a modern, glitzy, brash, and conspicuous way. It is a gaming engineering feat. There's no mistake about that. Many studios in the game right now wish they had the experience, the manpower, and the resources that Embark has. On the surface, it may look like another modern FPS multiplayer game. It has an everything goes kind of art style. It has some original ideas, for sure, but it also carries over a lot of old ones. It's decidedly competitive, and it sells the power fantasy of being the best among the rest. It is distilled, competitive FPS vinegar. But is that a bad thing? It probably depends on who you ask. They may say, this tech better serves a different game. They may scoff at the usage of AI, they may scoff at multiplayer only, they may scoff at the business model. Who's this game's audience? As it stands now, the game sits at a pretty humble Twitch tracker ranking, with a strong showing of 37K on average, dropped down to 8K within a month. This still puts it in company with Rocket League, a game with a massive amount of staying power. And I'd be lying if I said the Finals shared a ton of similarity with its roots. This game is made for a different audience that's here to stay, whether people like it or not. This is a tough industry to make it in, and you gotta make a lot of calls just right. You have to be willing to make people unhappy, and you have to be willing to bet on yourself. All I know is there are at least a couple commuters in Stockholm that are really hoping that this bet pays off. Does yet another free-to-play microtransaction shooter have what it takes? Well, if this video hasn't convinced you yet, I think it might. And we haven't seen the last of it.